My name is Ruben Salazar. I am 51 years old, and I don't even know where to start. I was born in Mexico City, in a simple neighborhood on the outskirts of Iztapalapa. For as long as I can remember, I have worked. My father was a truck driver, and my mother sold tamales outside our house. I grew up surrounded by the smells of dough, steam, sweat, and the noise of the street. I didn't study much, to be honest. I finished middle school because my mother insisted. But life doesn't give you a break, and at a very young age, I started working at whatever I could find. First, I loaded boxes in the back of trucks. Then, I was a mason's assistant. And after that, I got a taste for construction. I liked seeing a house being built from scratch. It made me proud to think that a part of me was staying there. When I was 21, I met Lorena. She was 18. She was pretty, with light brown skin and lively eyes. She worked at a stationery store near where my aunt lived. We saw each other several times on the street until I finally worked up the courage to talk to her. She was shy, but direct. And so we got to know each other, and within a year, we were married. We didn't have much, but we had each other. We rented a small room in her grandmother's house. We lived day to day, but we were happy and had 2 children, Ambito and Idiana. And that's when my life changed. Seeing my children sleep made me think of everything I didn't have, and everything I wanted to give them. But you want what you want, and life happens. Everything was getting more expensive. My job wasn't enough. I worked my ass off, and even then, there were times when we couldn't even buy milk. I was ashamed to see my children with broken sneakers, with an empty lunchbox, and Lorena always putting up with it, but with sadness in her eyes. One day, talking to a friend who had already left for the United States, he told me that there, you could earn good money. That there, in one day, you could earn what you would earn here in a week. I didn't think about it much, to be honest. It was more out of desperation than a decision. I told Anne and Lorena. Lorio asked me not to go. But she also understood. She knew it wasn't for me or for pleasure, but for them. I borrowed a motorcycle and crossed the border without papers, without knowing English, without knowing anything, only with a heart full of fear and hope. I arrived first in Fresno. A cousin helped me get a job in the fields. It was very hard. The sun burned, my hands cracked, my back hurt from 5 in the morning. But there I was, working like a slave, sending every dollar to Mexico. Every week, without fail. Then I went to Bakersfield. I started working as a cleaner at night and continued in the fields during the day. I slept 3 or 4 hours, but I told myself it was only temporary. Ruben, it's so your children can study and you can have a home. And so the years went by. Lorena sent me photos, wrote little letters, told me they loved me, that they were proud of me, that the children were doing well in school, that they were saving everything, that they almost had the land, that I shouldn't worry, that we would be together again soon. Those words were like crumbs of gasoline sometimes. When I finished my shift in the early morning, I would sit on the sidewalk with my feet aching. And I would read those letters over and over again, imagining myself hugging them, imagining myself walking into the house we were going to build. "Dad, look at my room," Beto would say in a drawing. "I miss you so much," Diana would write in her messy handwriting. And there I was, alone, sometimes wondering if it was worth it, if one day all of this would bear fruit. But they told me, "You're worth it, Ruben. You're worth it. Are you doing the right thing?" Salinas was where I stayed the longest, where I was most stable, so to speak. I got a job at a supermarket at night, stocking shelves. And in the mornings, I helped out with gardening. I had 2 cell phones, an old one with pictures of my family that I didn't dare change. It was like having a little piece of them in my pocket. I never stopped sending money, never. Until one day, I realized that 15 years had passed. 15, my son. It was already May, our data. My daughter too, on, and I felt tired. Exhausted, not just physically, but emotionally. I told myself, it's time to go back. I didn't tell anyone. I wanted to surprise them. I wanted to see their faces, feel their hugs, walk into the house we had dreamed of and say, "Ann, I'm here." That's what I thought. That's what I dreamed of for so many years. I don't know if you've ever experienced that. Waking up and not knowing what day it is. Opening your eyes on an inflatable mattress. With the alarm going off at 4:30 in the morning and your body telling you no, you can't do it anymore, but you get up anyway. That's how my days were in California, in Fresno. The heat was so intense that you sweated from the moment the sun came up. I worked in the grape harvest, but I also had to work with garlic, onions, lou, kai, and sugarcane. That's where I learned that the human body can endure more than you think. And I also learned that there are silences that hurt more than any scream. The bosses barely spoke to us. Sometimes it seemed like they didn't even see us. It was a Musparus, Morenos, the biggest riad, undocumented. Some paisas from Oaxaca, others from El Salvador, a few like me from Mexico City. And there we were, all under the same sun, cutting, packing, bending our backs for pennies. I remember a colleague, Tonio, who used to say, "Nobody gets sick here, because if you get sick, you don't eat." And he was right. I carried a small photo of my children in my wallet, all folded from being opened so many times. That photo was my lucky charm. When I couldn't take it anymore, I would take it out, look at it, and say to myself, "Come on, Ruben, you can do it." After a year of hardship, I left for Bakersfield. Things were just as tough there, but I got 2 jobs. During the day, I continued working in landscaping, cleaning yards and mowing lawns. At Target, I cleaned offices and slept in a room that 5 of us rented, with a bed for me and less than 2 meters of space. But I didn't care. I sent everything I earned home. Every week, without fail. And you don't buy anything for yourself? A guy asked me once, and I said, "What for?" I already have everything there. My reasons are there. Sometimes I felt like buying some nice sneakers or a nice jacket, but then I thought, that money is for painting the house, for Diana's school fees, for glasses. No way. That's how my Sundays went. They were the worst because we didn't work as much. So I thought more, missed more, longed more. I remember one Sunday when I sat in a park with a hamburger in my hand and saw a family walking by, a father with 2 children. They were laughing, playing, hugging each other. And there I was, alone, with a heavy heart. Sometimes I would talk on the phone with Lorena, not very often because the calls were expensive. But when we talked, she always told me the same thing. "We're fine, Ruben. We're waiting for you, and the kids are growing up, missing you." And I would imagine them. Diana with her pigtails, Beto with his ball. Sometimes they sent me drawings in the mail, letters with spelling mistakes that made me cry. Once, Diana wrote, "Daddy, when you come back, we'll all sleep together in the pretty house." That sentence stuck with me. In Salinas, I had a steady job working at a supermarket at night, loading boxes, stocking merchandise, and cleaning bathrooms. It wasn't easy, but it was quieter than the fields. I stayed there for several years. I had a fixed routine. I got up at 6 in the afternoon, ate something quick, took the bus, started my shift at 8 in the evening, and at 4 in the morning, I went back to my room, slept for about 5 hours, and then I would help out with whatever needed to be done on the street. Cutting branches, painting fences, helping people move. That's how the days went by. I didn't go out. I didn't have any friends. I didn't drink. My only distraction was listening to music on my old headphones and looking at the photos people sent me on WhatsApp. I got excited when Lorena sent me a picture of the land. Look, we've cleared the space for the house. Another month and we'll start putting up the walls. I believed it. I could see myself already, old, sitting on the porch of that house, with a cup of coffee in my hand, watching my grandchildren run around. It was that dream that kept me going. Not the money, no. The Lusos. Just that dream. I remember that at the end of every month, I would do my accounts very carefully, set aside money for rent, my cell phone and everything else, and send it all. Sometimes I was left with $30 for the whole month. But I felt good. I felt like I was 8 years old. I felt like a father, a husband, a provider. Once, a roommate said to me, "Wouldn't you like to bring them here?" And yes, I would have liked to, but I was also afraid, without papers, without insurance, without a network. They were already settled, decent, when I was the one who endured everything, just like that. Lubayao and I spent 15 years without birthdays, without Christmas, without seeing them grow up, without hugging them. I'm not complaining about working, no. I'm complaining about what came after. But that, I'll tell you in the next part, Lorena. Sometimes, I even find it hard to say her name, because she was everything to me, to all of us. We met on a random afternoon. I was helping my aunt carry some bags of rice, and she came out of the stationery shop with a smile I'll never forget. It was one of those smiles that doesn't seek attention, but sticks with you. Without meaning to, I approached her with some excuse. I think I asked her if they sold pens. She answered in a soft, sweet voice, as if everything she said came calmly. And that's how it all started. We had nothing, no car, no nice furniture, no savings. But we had hope, we had enthusiasm, and we had love. The kind that is built, not bought. We got married in a simple ceremony at San Judas Church, with our family squeezed into a few pews and a mariachi band borrowed from a cousin. We were very happy at first, in those days when it didn't matter if we had beans and eggs for dinner, as long as there was laughter and company. I worked in construction. She took care of the house. Then the children came. First Beto, then Diana, Anne. Beto was born on a stormy night. I saw so much that we thought we wouldn't make it to the hospital. When I saw him for the first time, so small, so helpless, I promised myself that he would never want for anything. That if I had to break my hands working, I would do it. But that he would have everything I never had. Diana was different. She was born quickly, without warning, and it was as if my heart was broken in two. From the moment I held her, I felt that she was my little ray of light. That girl made me laugh just by looking at me. She followed me around the house, calling me Papito, with that little doll's voice that stayed with me forever. We didn't have much, but we dreamed big. We wanted a little house of our own, small but ours. Lorena always said, "As long as we have 2 rooms, a decent bathroom, and a kitchen where I can cook in peace, I'll be happy." And I would answer, "Just wait, you'll see." We started saving a little bit at a time, then we found out about some cheap land, but we couldn't afford it. That's when I started thinking about moving north. It wasn't an easy decision. I spent 8 whole years watching my children sleep and wondering if it was worth it. There was a Ruben who wanted to stay, to hug them, to live with them every moment, and another Ruben who felt compelled to leave, to look for something better. When I told Lorena that I wanted to go to the United States, she cried like never before. I'd never seen her cry like that. "If you don't come back," she asked me, "I'll come back, I swear. I'm not leaving forever." The night before I left, we slept in each other's arms without saying much. And when I said goodbye to Vito and Diana, I told them, "I'm going to work for you, so you can have what you deserve." And I left. From there, whenever I could, I sent her messages, letters, whatever I could. I told her how much I missed her, how much I thought about her, and she replied that she was saving everything, that they were saving money, that the children were doing well. She sent me photos of the land. She said they already had the foundations. I imagined everything. The white facade, the light-colored windows, the little garden where Lorena could plant her flowers. I even imagined a little room upstairs for me, with me, or Macau, my old radio, and my grandchildren playing outside. I believed in her, in every word she wrote to me, in every plan we made through voice messages. I never doubted it, not once. Sometimes she would send me videos of Diana dancing, of Beto playing football. I would watch them in the early hours of the morning after my shift, while I made myself some bread and milk, and even though I was alone in a cold, borrowed room, I felt part of them. It was as if the distance didn't matter, because everything I did now, I did for them. Once, Lorena wrote to me, "I miss you so much that I even talk to you in my sleep." And that broke my heart, because I also talked to her while I was working. Sometimes, when I was alone cutting branches or cleaning floors, I imagined she was there, telling me how her day had gone, and I would respond in a low voice, as if she could hear me. That's how I survived so many years, with faith in the love we had built, with the certainty that she was waiting for me, with the hope of returning and seeing my children grow up to be good men. That's how I survived so many years, with faith in the love we had built, with the certainty that she was waiting for me, with the hope of returning and seeing my children become good men, good people. Thanks to what I had done for them, the plan was perfect. I just had to hold on a little longer, one more year, a few more months, until everything was ready. And then, yes, I would return. Return to my wife's embrace. Return to the house I had promised. Return to the place I had never stopped imagining. That's what I thought. That's what kept me alive. The day I decided to return was one of those strange days. I was in the supermarket warehouse, stacking boxes of cereal, when I happened to look at the calendar. It was February 14th, the day of love, the day of affection, and there I was, alone, between shelves, with swollen feet and my back in pieces, and out of nowhere, I felt that I couldn't take it anymore, not physically. No, I felt something inside, like a hole, as if it no longer made sense to stay there. 15 years had passed. My children were 15. They were adults now. Lorena and I, who knows? But I was still there, waiting for something. I didn't know if it still existed. That night, after my shift, I sat down on a bench and started looking at all the old photos on my cell phone. The birthdays I missed at Christmas, the smiles I only knew from pictures, and I said to myself, "Ruben, that's it." I started saving what little I had, sold some things, and without telling anyone, I bought a bus ticket to Tijuana. I crossed the border, just as I had arrived, alone, exhausted, loaded with dreams. And from there, I took a bus to Mexico City. The whole way, I imagined their faces. I thought about the moment when Lorena would see me walk through the door, how my children would run to hug me, how I would cry when I saw the house we had planned so much. I saw myself opening the gate, smelling Lorena's cooking, hearing her voice saying, "Ruben?" It was all in my head. It all felt so real, so close. I arrived in the city at the bus stop, breathing that air, even though it was dirty and noisy, my Iesu, censure, alive. I grabbed a taxi and gave him the address of the house, yes. The address she had sent me years ago, when she told me she was already living there. But when the taxi stopped, what I saw had nothing to do with the photos. It was an empty lot, fenced in with old mines, full of trash and weeds. I thought I had made a mistake. I asked the driver if the address was correct. My ISU, I wanted that street to be mine. But I walked around and around, nothing. My heart started beating as if it were going to jump out of my chest. I took out my cell phone and called Lorena, but she didn't answer. I called again, nothing. So I went to my mother-in-law's house, where we knew they sometimes stayed. I knocked on the door, Diana, Auntie, my daughter. But she didn't hug me, she didn't cry with emotion. She looked at me as if she were looking at a stranger. "Dad?" she said quietly to Ani. "I stayed, my girl. They're coming back. I'm here." She didn't say anything. She just stepped aside to let me in. Inside was Lorena, sitting there with a frightened look on her face, as if she never expected to see me again. "What are you doing here?" was the first thing she said. Not, "I'm so glad you're back," or "I missed you," or "I love you." What am I doing here? I came for you, for all of you. We didn't know you were coming back. How could you not know? I sent money all these years. I told you this was temporary. That's when I started to notice everything. The awkward silence, the looks, avoiding me, the discomfort in the air. And then she said it. "Ruben, we're not living together anymore." What? I left you years ago, but I never knew how to tell you. I stayed, she moved, I didn't understand, and the money, I asked. We used it for expenses, for the children. Then there were problems. It was spent. The house was never built. And then I felt like my soul was being ripped out of me. 15 years. 15 years of breaking my heart. 15 years without seeing my children. 15 years of sending every penny. Of enduring hunger, cold, loneliness, all to find a woman who no longer loved me. With children who barely spoke to me, with a dream that never existed. I sat down on a chair. "Don't cry," I said. "No, nothing." I stared at the floor, as if looking for an explanation among the broken tiles. Diana approached me. "Dad, we didn't know how to contact you. They always had my number, but you also distanced yourself." And then I realized something. Not only had they forgotten me, but I had also lost myself. I was a ghost who sent money, nothing more. And Ruben, who left, was no longer the Ruben who came back. I don't know how many hours I spent sitting in that chair. I didn't speak, I didn't think, I understood. I just listened to my breathing. And I felt a lump in my throat that wouldn't go away. You know that moment when your mind wants to cry, scream, hit something, but your body doesn't react. That's how I was. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Lorena came into the room. Diana went to get a glass of water and left it on the table without saying a word. Beto wasn't even there. I was left alone in that room, which smelled of damp, and it passed with only my questions and a pain that I couldn't contain in my chest. I felt as if my whole life had been ripped out of me and given back to me in pieces. How could I have been so stupid? How could I not have seen anything? How could I continue believing, trusting, dreaming when, on the other side, there was nothing left? I got up, left the house without looking at anyone, and walked through streets I no longer recognized. Streets that had once been part of me now seemed foreign, as if I were in another city. The air hit my face, and every step I took was like an echo of everything I'd lost. I went to my sister's house, my youngest sister. I hadn't told her I was coming. When she saw me at the door, she burst into tears. "Ruben, what happened?" And then I broke down. I broke down. I cried like I hadn't cried in years, like I hadn't been able to cry up there in the north, like I didn't cry when I fell off a roof, or when I got sick with kidney disease and had no one to take me to the hospital. I cried like a child, like a broken man. She hugged me, let me stay, made me a makeshift bed in her son's room, who was away at college. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling and thought about every year I had lost, every birthday I hadn't been there, every chance I hadn't taken, every lie I had swallowed with my eyes closed. I felt like a used, forgotten piece of trash. And worst of all, I blamed her, even though I was the one to blame. Because part of me thought that maybe I had failed too. Maybe I had been so busy sending money and building a future that I didn't realize I was missing out on the present. Maybe I had distanced myself so much that when I wanted to come back, there was no one left waiting for me. The days that followed were a silent hell. I didn't go out, I didn't eat well, I didn't talk to anyone. My sister told me that I had to face the situation, talk to Lorena, to my children, but I couldn't. I was afraid of hearing more truths, afraid of looking at my children and seeing in their eyes that they didn't need me anymore, afraid of accepting that everything I was no longer useful. One day Vito came to see me. He came into the room, sat on the edge of the bed, and said, "Dad, I don't know what to say to you." And I didn't either. We were silent for a while. Then I thought I felt it. But I never hated you, not anymore. I didn't know you. That was like a stab in the heart, my own blade. The child I worked for every day, the child I bought shoes for with my first paycheck, the same child who drew me little notes saying, "Dad, you're my hero," was telling me he didn't know me. "Ypsilon, Diana?" I asked. "She's also out of it. But she still loves me." I wanted to tell him so many things. I wanted to ask him for forgiveness. I wanted to hug him. But I couldn't. I felt so small, so alien to them, as if I were a stranger who had gotten involved in a story that no longer belonged to him. Weeks went by. I tried to find Lorena to talk to her. But she was already with someone else, my sister told me. And although I already suspected it, hearing it like that was like a knife in my soul. She got tired of waiting, Ruben, my sister told me, waiting for him to answer. "They never said anything to me. I kept sending everything, believing that we were fine. And then the anger came back. Yes, come on. Because if they didn't love me anymore, if they didn't want to know about me, why didn't they tell me? Why keep asking for my money? Why leave me there, working my ass off, full of hope? While here they had already erased me. I wanted to scream. I wanted to break things, but I didn't have the strength. All I could do was cry, again, alone in silence, like men cry when they have no one to hug. And there, in that deep sadness, I made a promise to myself that I wouldn't let that story be the end of me. But at that moment, I swear, I didn't know how to go on living. The days dragged on and the nights were even longer. You can't imagine what it's like to wake up in a place that doesn't feel like home, with the light coming in through a window you don't recognize, with voices in the kitchen that aren't your family, with a heavy conscience and an empty heart. I slept on one of those folding beds with a thin mattress that sagged in the middle. My sister let me stay at her house with all her love, but I felt like I was in the way. Not because she made me feel that way, but because I no longer felt like I belonged anywhere. Outside, the city went on with its rhythm. Cars passed by, children played, life went on. And there I was, as if I had returned to a movie in which I no longer had a role, sitting for hours on the sidewalk with a coffee in my hand, watching the sun go down, thinking, wandering, sometimes talking to myself. One day, I passed by a park where some children were playing, and I saw a man pushing his daughter on the swings, laughing, taking pictures, and I broke down. I broke down because I never pushed Diana on a swing, because I was never at her festivals, her birthdays, when she was sick, because I wanted to give them everything and ended up giving them nothing. What was all the sacrifice for if in the end there was nothing for me? I started to feel sick. My body hurt. My head wouldn't leave me alone. I went to the public health doctor, and they told me I had high blood pressure, early diabetes, lower back problems, nothing I didn't already know. But hearing it from someone else was like confirming that the years had indeed passed me by, and that I was no longer the same Ruben, the strong man I used to be. I tried to find work, but who hires a 51-year-old man with a tired face and shaky hands? No one. I went to a construction site where an acquaintance told me they were putting up a building. The foreman looked me up and down and said, You can still carry heavy loads." I didn't know what to say. Gigi, I wanted to say. But inside, I felt a burning shame. They told me it was work for 2 days, and I ended up exhausted. My hands no longer responded the same way, and that's when I realized I couldn't go back to what I had before. I returned to my sister's house, locked myself in my room, and began to have nightmares. I dreamed that I was back in the United States, and everything was the same. I was working, sending money, talking to voices that were no longer there, and I would wake up sweating, confused, with a sadness that penetrated to my bones. My sister would say, "Ruben, you need to talk to someone." Why would I answer her? Who would understand all this? She insisted. She wanted to help me, and I just wanted to disappear. But one day, something changed. I was at the market, helping to load some boxes, when an older man approached me. He asked me if I was Ruben Salazar. I said yes, and he said, "My nephew told me about you. He said you came back after many years, that things went badly for you." I looked at him, not knowing what to say, and then he said something I will never forget. "You're not the only one. There are many of us who came back empty-handed and with broken hearts, sitting on a bench." He told me his story, which was similar to mine. Different in details, but the same in pain. There, I knew I wasn't alone. I knew other men like me, others who had left everything behind for their families, who had crossed the desert, worked as mules, dreamed of returning, and who, upon their return, found closed doors, broken men who had been defeated. We started meeting in the market, in the park, in the church. We shared stories, cried sometimes, laughed other times, and little by little, we began to breathe again. One day, one of them said to me, "Ruben, you know how to paint. Why don't you do small jobs?" And so I started, first painting a fence, then a gate, then a room. It wasn't much, but it made me feel useful. It gave me back a little bit of my dignity. It gave me a reason to get up in the morning. One Saturday, Diana came to see me, shy, with her eyes downcast. "Dad, can I talk to you? Let's sit down on the same bench where I used to drink my coffee. I know I wasn't the daughter you hoped for." "Don't say that," I said, with a lump in my throat. "It's just that your absence hurt me, and I didn't know how to handle it. Mom never spoke ill of you, but I felt like you weren't coming back. But you did come back, and I'm glad, even though I didn't know how to show it." And there, we hugged each other after so long, after so much silence. A hug that didn't heal everything, but it opened a door. Beto also came later, with more distance, more caution. But he looked me in the eyes even less. I don't know if I'll ever get back what I lost. I don't know if I'll ever feel like part of a family again. But I learned something. You can rebuild yourself, even if it's piece by piece. And here I am, little by little, wrapping myself up, being reborn. They say that time heals everything. But that's not true. Time doesn't heal. Time accommodates. And that's how it was with me. No, I'm not going to lie. There were days when I didn't even want to open my eyes. I would wake up and the first thing I felt was this sadness stuck to my chest, as if it had fallen asleep with me. But something inside me, something small but stubborn, pushed me to keep going. I started taking on odd jobs, a fence here, a kitchen there, simple jobs, poorly paid, but they were jobs. And that helped me get back on my feet. I realized that I needed to start from scratch, not with resentment, not with anger, but with humility. Because it's not just about what I lost, but what I can still build. One day, walking through the neighborhood, I saw a boy carrying a jug. He was sweating, and without thinking, I said, "I'll help you." He thanked me with a sincere smile. That simple, small gesture made me feel part of the world again. Little by little, I started to get out of Lalo. Diana came to see me every week. We would chat. She would tell me about her job at Giplanis. Sometimes she would cook with me. We would make rice with eggs like in the old days. And in the midst of that simple routine, we began to really get to know each other, not as father and daughter in a photo, but as two people who were learning to love each other unconditionally. One day she said to me, "Dad, you know, I never told you, but I always wanted to dance with you on my 15th birthday. It hurt me because I wasn't there. Because that day I was in a parking lot, cleaning bathrooms, while my daughter was getting dressed in a dress I never saw. I'm sorry, my daughter," I said, swallowing hard. "It doesn't matter anymore," she replied, taking my hand. "The important thing is that you're here now." And then I understood something that took me many years to learn. It's not about going back to the past. It's about doing something with what you have. With Beto, it was more difficult. He had his personality, his distance, his armor. But one day he asked me for help fixing a water leak in his house. We went together to buy the parts, and we had a beer when we finished. And between jokes, he said to me, Sometimes I wonder what it would have been like if you had always been here. And I wonder what it would have been like to see you grow up. I replied, and we were silent. But in that silence, there was something. Something that healed. With Lorena, there was no going back. She already had another life. And although it hurt, the truth is that I also needed to close that door. Not with hatred, but with acceptance. I thanked her for the years we shared, for the children she gave me, for the letters that sustained me while I was there. And then I left and went back to the neighborhood where I grew up. I rented a small room near the market, and with the little I had, I bought a used stove, a simple bed, and an old radio. That's where my new life began. I got up early, made my coffee, and went out to look for work. Sometimes I found work, sometimes I didn't. But I didn't despair anymore. I started writing in a notebook, things I felt, not to publish them, just so I wouldn't keep so much inside. And one day, I decided to go to a support meeting for migrants who had returned. I didn't know what to expect, but it was the best thing I could have done. There I met Don Chucho, Martin, Lalo, men like me, Anne, with similar stories, with open wounds. But with a desire to heal, we would meet every Tuesday, talk, listen to each other, without judging, without interrupting. And in that group, I found something I hadn't felt in years, a sense of belonging. I don't know when it happened, but I started helping others who had just arrived. I told them what I would have liked to hear. I spoke to them truthfully, without embellishment, but with hope. One afternoon, a young man said to me, "Thank you, Don Ruben, for talking to me like that." It did me good. And that day, I cried, Anne, but no longer out of pain, because I understood that everything I had lived through had not been in vain. Yes, I lost many things before my time, in my family, my dreams. But I gained something that cannot be bought with money. The ability to go on, even with my soul in pieces. And today I live in peace. I have no luxuries, no car, no house of my own. But I have a place to live, and that is worth more than everything I sent in 15 years. Now I see my children more often. We laugh, we hug, we speak honestly with each other. And although we can't get back the time we lost, we are building something new. And I continue working, painting, repairing, helping wherever I am needed. And every time I get paid, I think about this money. It is mine. I earned it with dignity, and I don't give it out of obligation, but out of love. I don't expect anything from anyone, but I am grateful for everything I receive, every luxury. And if I have learned anything along the way, it is this: never put your whole life in the hands of others, even if you love them with all your heart, because shared dreams can also be shattered. And when that happens, the only thing that can save you is what you kept for yourself. Through strength, through faith, through dignity. Today I speak to you from another place, not from pain, but from a healed wound. Because yes, it hurt. You have no idea how much. They ripped my dreams away from me. They betrayed me. They forgot me. But here I am, and believe me, that is more than many achieve. Many stay there in the north, working until their bodies give out, their hearts rotten with nostalgia. Others return and lose themselves in alcohol, sadness, and guilt. And others, like me, decide to take a deep breath and start over. Not with the same people, not under the same conditions, but with a new outlook. If you are watching this video and you are there, far away, listen to me carefully. Don't put your life on hold for anyone. Don't sacrifice yourself to the point of disappearing. Yes, you have to work. Yes, you have to help those you love. But you also have to take care of yourself. You also deserve to live, laugh, rest, see your children grow up, feel that your efforts are worthwhile. I thought I was doing the right thing, and I'm not saying I wasn't. But now I understand that life can't be put on hold for so long. Because when you come back, people change, you change, and sometimes you don't fit in anymore. I'm not telling you this to scare you. I'm telling you this to wake you up. So you don't live alone, waiting to come back. Because sometimes that return no longer exists. It happened to me, and I'm not the only one. I know hundreds of similar stories. Men and women who gave everything, and when they came back, there was nothing left. I didn't hold a grudge, because a grudge wasn't going to give me back the lost hugs, or the years, or the laughter of my children when they learned to walk. I forgave them, not for them, but for me. Because I wanted to live in peace. And that's another thing I want to tell you. Peace isn't given to anyone. Peace is built inside you, and it's hard. It costs tears and loneliness, swallowing your pride, but it can be done. Today, I walk with my head held high, not because I've done everything right, but because, despite everything they threw at me, I got back up again. And that's worth something. If you've been through something similar, if they broke your soul, if you came back and everything had changed, I embrace you from here. From my little room with a concrete bed and an old blanket. From my coffee without sugar, and my battery-powered radio. I embrace you because I know how it feels, and I want to tell you that you're not alone, that there is life after pain, that there is hope after the fall. I don't have much, but I have peace, and I have the certainty that today I am stronger, more mature, more human. And if you're watching this, I only ask two things of you. First, tell me where you are watching this video from. I would like to know if you are there, in California, Texas, Carolina, or if you are here, in some corner of Mexico. And second, tell me if you know anyone who has experienced something similar, not to gossip, but to accompany us, because we need to listen to each other. Because out there are many Rubens, many like you, like me. And if you want to continue listening to real stories of migrants, of life, of struggle, of love, of pain, subscribe to the channel from the heart. I'm telling you, here you won't find luxuries or fairy tales. Here there are truths. Here there is humanity. I am Ruben Salazar, a man who crossed the border in search of a future and ended up finding himself in the ruins, among the rubble, but still standing. Thank you for listening. Thank you for not judging me. Thank you for letting me share my story. And if you ever feel alone, remember me. Because if I could get out of there, you can too. Ypsilon, here, and I'll be here to listen to you. Always.